Hello, hello. Today I really wanted to just kind of have a little ramble about Soulbeast. I've been playing it a ton over the last weekend, and Condition Soulbeast in particular, I think there's a lot of people out there that want it to be really cool, and I think it has the potential to be a very cool elite spec. However, there are some very tiny little problems that I genuinely feel could hold this class back, and today I just wanted to discuss those. But before I jump into that, I'd first like to try and illustrate the problem. And if you look very closely, the gameplay in the background here, this is actually kind of the build that I'd settled on after, a few hours theory crafting and trying out different setups, trying out Dagger. And for those of you who've been playing Condi for the last few months, this probably looks very similar to what you're used to. And you wouldn't really be wrong. I mean, this is basically the Condi Ranger rotation. I'm camping a Lynx pet, pressing those skills pretty much on cooldown, and the only mechanical difference to this rotation is that I should be pressing Shortbow 5 when I'm on Shortbow, just to proc the new Twice as Vicious trait. So next up, I just want to give 3 quick points of feedback that I feel, if addressed, could really help push this in the right direction. So first up, it's this idea of our pet conditions being bugged whenever we swap them. This has been an issue ever since the game launched. However, now that the Soulbeast's primary class mechanic is merging with the pet, this is likely going to be a much bigger issue. So to kind of demonstrate and explain this, if you command your pet to put some conditions on the enemy, in this case the Lynx leaping at me and putting some bleeds on, those bleeds will tick using the pet's condition damage. So in this case I'm getting these 328 bleed ticks just from the Lynx. Now, watch what happens when, instead of keeping that Lynx out, we're going to merge with it. Notice how those nice 328 bleed ticks have dropped all the way down to 88. The reason for this is because that pet no longer exists. It doesn't have any condition damage, therefore the bleed is just using 0 condition damage for its calculation. Essentially what this means is that any fun Soulbeast rotations that involve unmerging with your pet, casting the pet skill, switching to the other pet, using that pet's pet skill and then remerging with the second pet, are almost entirely pointless because the damage you do from those pet skills doesn't really add up to anything. Or at least a large portion of it is going to be kind of negated. My second issue is related to how much it seems like we're going to have to give up if we ever want to actually swap pets. And this is partly because of the attribute bonus we get when we actually merge with the pet. So for example, merging with the Lynx is giving me this deadly boon, which is plus 200 condition damage, plus 100 precision. This is a huge increase for PvE. Now, unmerging with our pet means we're going to be giving this up for 7.5 seconds, and in my opinion, you would have to buff the pets to insane levels of condition damage before this would be worth it, especially given that first pet condition damage bug. So since I'm sure most rangers are not too keen on the idea of just being merged with one pet for the rest of their lives, I thought a good way to rectify it might be to maybe add a minor trait, which essentially lets that attribute bonus linger for a few seconds after we unmerge. This could even directly compete with Unstoppable Union, basically giving PvP players a nice choice between having more damage when they're unmerged or the ability to break stun when they remerge with their pet. It has some cool synergies. Lastly, I feel like Dagger really needs a second look, especially in comparison to Axe. I mean, some of you may have noticed that I am actually using an Axe for these Condi kind of benchmarks in the background here, and I honestly assure you this is no accident, it just feels better in almost every way. If you don't believe me, it's a good idea to take a look at the number 2 skills, as this is where the primary damage comes from. Dagger is really cool. It has this poison effect when you're merged, so you end up with 4 stacks of bleed and 2 stacks of poison. But if you actually add up the durations, it still basically falls behind Axe number 2. Axe number 2 does more bleeding, it has 5 projectile finishes, each hit can proc sharpened edges, it has a lower cooldown, and while that 0.5 seconds doesn't sound like much, it's essentially 1.5 seconds that you have to sit on Axe Torch without switching to Shortbow, which slows down your entire rotation by quite a lot. Furthermore, if you consider that the entire 4-step Dagger auto-rotation, which by the way we don't really have time to use, because Condi Ranger has a million other skills that we need to be pressing at all times, that entire chain is beaten out by a single Winter's Bite. And that really throws Dagger into question. And to make matters worse, it feels like Dagger has very low power scaling, so it actually hits weaker than Axe. It has, of course, melee only damage, whereas Axe is kind of pseudo-ranged. It cleaves worse than Axe. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it just feels like a worse version of Axe. So I think giving it some kind of unique identity, something to differentiate it from the other weapons, would be really cool and potentially useful. So yeah, that's pretty much all the feedback I have to give at this point. I really, really hope this didn't come across as just self-entitled whining, but, you know, it's just my kind of opinions on this. I genuinely think even if none of this is addressed, Soulbeast is going to be incredible. I think they've done a fantastic job with the spec, and I can't wait to get my hands on the final version.